I am a massive Oasis fan, and I have been for as long as I can remember. Growing up in and around Manchester, you can't really escape Oasis because they are everywhere, and I love their music, and I have done ever since I was a kid. It was some of the first music that I ever started to listen to properly, and it's just stuck with me ever since. And yesterday I went to the new Oasis pop-up shop in Manchester, their new merch store, and I picked up this, which is their new tour program for this tour. I cannot get my head around the fact that Oasis are actually back and they're touring right now. But this is the new tour program for the tour that started a couple of days ago. And it is essentially just a photo book of a load of different iconic venues that they played in the early 90s. And they've gone back or Brian Cannon, the photographer, and I'll come on to Brian Cannon a little bit later on. He's a graphic designer for Microdot and he did all of the early Oasis sleeves. But he's gone back and photographed all of these iconic venues in 2025. And I've been flicking through this, and one of the very first things that I noticed about the photography in this book is that not all of the images are perfect. And that's kind of the point, really. And I wanted to make a video about this just to be a little reminder to us as photographers that not everything needs to be perfect. I think as photographers, we sometimes get a little bit too hung up on the idea of perfection because we want perfect light, perfect composition, leading lines, perfect focus, no distractions in our images, and all of these different things that we're looking for to be able to create the perfect image. And I think we sometimes get too hung up on that and a little bit too obsessed with that, because sometimes it is those things that make an image not perfect that makes it memorable or stand out to someone. And I think the photos in this book are the perfect example of that for me. So one example here is the picture of the Barrowlands in Glasgow. The sky is completely blown out. There's a photo here of the Hacienda now, or the Hacienda Apartments, because the Hacienda now doesn't exist, but it was an iconic nightclub in Manchester in the 90s. It is now a block of flats called the Hacienda Apartments, but it's got people walking past it and there's traffic as well. He's not waited until the people are gone or there's no traffic. He's just left that in there. And that almost helps tell the story because that is life there now. It wasn't in the 90s when Oasis played their launch party for Definitely Maybe there. However, that is life there now. So it tells the story of that area now. There's another example here of an image of the gates to Knebworth House where Oasis played those massive shows in 1996. And there is a huge lens flare in the corner of the image. Now, that would put a lot of photographers off and they'd maybe wait until the sun was behind a cloud, or they'd wait until the sun was further around so they could avoid the lens flare. They might take the image from a different angle to avoid the lens flare because he's shooting directly into the sun. There's all of these different things that he could have done to avoid that lens flare. However, he's not bothered by it. I think it looks quite cool. And there's also, if we go to this image here of Manchester Central, or GMEX as it used to be known, there's all a motion blur of a tram and a guy sat here just on the street. So he could have quite easily waited until that tram was gone. He could have photoshopped that guy out. He could have asked that guy to move or wait till he wasn't there, but he's just gone with it. And it's all of these distractions that add texture to the image and interest to the image as well. And it just goes to show that you don't always need the perfect image to be able to make a memorable image. But these images will be looked at by millions of people all over the world that buy this program, that go to see them on the tour. It's almost a piece of memorabilia for those people when they look back, when they pick this back up in 10 or 20 years time and remember when they went to see Oasis reunite. And they're not going to care that there was a lens flare in the bottom corner of a picture, or there's a guy walking through it, or there's a motion blur from a tram. It doesn't matter because these pictures are a piece of history, and that is the main thing because they tell a story. And I think it's just a nice little reminder to us as photographers that not everything has to be perfect. And I think social media has got a lot to answer for that, because we always want everything to be perfect on social media, and cameras now are that good that we want everything to be perfectly sharp and perfectly in focus. All of these different things that go into helping us create the perfect image. But realistically, none of that really matters, and the main thing is telling a story. I mentioned before that Brian Cannon was the photographer for all of these images in here, and he was the guy behind designing all of the early Oasis album sleeves in the 90s. So Definitely Maybe, What's the Story, Morning Glory, Be Here Now, The Master Plan. It's his handwriting on the Definitely Maybe album, and he worked with the Verve, and his work is pretty much everywhere in all of the music that I'm interested in, that I grew up listening to. And when it came to him designing this program, he only had 6 days to run up and down the country shooting all of these different iconic venues in Oasis's history, which really isn't that much time for the amount of work that has gone into this. So maybe that goes some way to explaining as to why he's not worried about lens flares or motion blur in some of his images. However, it works, and that's his style as well, because he designed all of these different iconic album sleeves from Oasis and the Verve. There is all of these different things in his images that you can pick up on, and you will notice that as part of his style. So when I say they're not perfect, perfect is probably the wrong word, because in the sense of this, they are perfect because they help make it feel raw and real, and they add texture and they tell a story, which is exactly what this is designed to do. So perfect might be the wrong word, but perfect is something that a lot of photographers, myself included, are always looking for, and maybe it's something that we don't need to be looking for. And it made me realize that sometimes as photographers, we are a little bit too, in fact, way too critical of our own work. Myself included, I am my own worst enemy, my own worst critic, and I'm judging my work all of the time. I don't know what gear Brian Cannon uses, but like I said before, gear isn't the be all and end all. And I think a lot of this is just focused on the story, and I think that is a really good example that we should all take a bit of a note from. With everything that is available to us now, there is so much pressure put on every shot to make it technically spot on. And sometimes photography isn't about technical perfection. Sometimes it is just about feeling something or telling a story. So yeah, that was just a reminder to myself more than anything, as soon as I started flicking through this program and noticing things. And hopefully it can be a little reminder to yourself as well to not throw away your imperfect shots, because they might be the ones that stick, or they might be the ones that start to mean the most further down the line. So yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And this still don't feel real. I cannot wait for next week. I'm off to see them in Manchester. I am so excited, but it definitely doesn't feel real. I never, ever thought this would happen in a million years, but I'm so glad I've been proven wrong. Yeah, see you in the next video.